My name is Samuel Beatty. To introduce my piece, I'd like to ask you guys a question. Well, what is a great man? Is he a moral man or a courageous man? Is your father a great man? In chapter 22 of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Huck Finn watches an angry southern mob preparing to lynch Colonel Sherburn, who had just shot a man for insulting his good name. However, Twain shows Colonel Sherburn as a great man, and how he is able to turn an angry mob away from lynching him by pointing out how bad their own faults are compared to his. This passage, known as Colonel Sherburn's confrontation with the Arkansas mob, shows Twain's harsh view of the South. People who think they're braver than any other, but are really just cowards, who will murder each other in the back from behind. Thank you. They swarmed up towards Sherburn's house, and raging like Injuns, and everything had to clear the way, or to run over and tromp and mush. And it was awful to see. Children was heeling it ahead of the mob, screaming and trying to get out of the way. And every window on the road was full of women's heads. And there was slave boys in every tree. And bucks and wenches was looking over every fence. And as soon as the mob would nearly get to them, they would break and scuttle back out of reach. Lots of women and girls was crying and taking on, scared most to death. They swarmed up in front of Sherburn's palings as thick as they could jam together, and you couldn't hear yourself think for the noise. It was a little 20-foot yard. Some sung out, "Tear down the fence! Tear down the fence!" Then there was a racket of ripping and tearing and smashing, and down she goes. And the front wall of the crowd begins to roll in like a wave. Just then, Sherburn steps out on the roof of his little front porch with a double-barreled gun in his hands and takes his stand, perfectly calm and deliberate, not saying a word. The racket stopped and the waves sucked back. Sherburn never said a word, just stood there, down. The stillness was awful creepy, and Sherburn went his eyes slowly on the crowd. Wherever it struck, the people tried to live to him, but they couldn't, and they dropped their eyes and looked sneaky. Then pretty soon Sherburn sort of laughed. Not the pleasant kind, but the kind that makes you feel like when you're eating bread that's got sand in it. Then he said, slow and scornful, "The idea of you lynching anybody, it's amusing. The idea of you thinking you have pluck enough to lynch a man because you're brave enough to tar and feather poor, friendless, cast-out women that come along here. Did that make you think you had grit enough to lay your hands on a man? Why, a man saved the hands of your gun. As long as it's daytime, you're not behind him. Do I know you? I know you clear. Though I was born and raised in the South, I've lived in the North, so I know the average Oliver. The average man's a coward. In the North, he lets anybody walk over him that wants to, and goes home and prays for a humble spirit to bear. In the South, one man all by himself stopped a stage full of men in the daytime and robbed a lot. Your newspapers call you a brave people, so much that you think you're braver than any other people, whereas you're just as brave. No braver. Why don't your juries hang murderers? Because they're afraid the man's friends will come and shoot them in the back, in the dark. And that's just what they would do, so they always acquit. And then a man goes in the night with 100 masked cowards at his back and lynches the rest. Your mistake is you didn't bring a man with you. That's one mistake. And the other is you didn't come in the dark and fetch your mask. You brought part of the man, Buck Harvester. And if you hadn't had him to start you, you'd have taken him out in a blow. You didn't want to come. The average man don't like trouble and danger. You don't like trouble and danger. But if half a man like Buck Harvester shouts, "Lynch him! Lynch him!" you're afraid to back down. Afraid you'll be found out to be what you are. Cowards! And so you raise a yell and hang yourself on that half a man's coattail and come raging up here, swearing about what big things you're going to do. The pitifulest thing out is a mob. That's what an army is, a mob. They don't fight with the courage that's born into them. That's borrowed from their mass, from their officers. But a mob without any man ahead of it is beneath pitifulness. Now the thing for you to do is to droop your heels and go home and crawl in a hole. If any real lynching is going to be done, it's going to be done in the dark, southern fashion. But when they come, they'll bring their mass and fetch a man along. Now leave and take your half a man with you. Tossing his gun across his left arm and cocking it when he says this, the crowd watched back a second and then broke all apart when tearing off every which way. In Buck Hardness, he yielded after them, looking tall over the cheek. I could have stayed if I wanted to, but I didn't want to.